The wind strips barely moved. One curled slightly, lifting at the corner where the adhesive had given up against the sun-baked glass. Merrick didn't touch it. The slight flutter told her more than the numbers on her range card. South-southwest drift. Light, but inconsistent. She adjusted the scope's windage dial half a click left, then paused to watch again. The 17th floor had been abandoned for years. Fluorescent lights hung dead above her. Some twisted out of the ceiling. The floor was littered with glass grit, peeled vinyl tiles, and a few bird bones in the corners. She'd swept a wide arc clear when they arrived. Nothing scraped now unless someone moved wrong. Claire didn't move wrong. Her rifle lay low across a wedge of burlap and foam, muzzle tucked tight into the hole she'd carved out between two crumbling blocks of concrete. She'd brought her own mat, trimmed to size, and folded flat along the dirty floor. The suppressor extended just short of the window's jagged edge, its surface painted in heat-faded black. Outside, the heat haze shimmered over rooftops and alleyways, making outlines stutter and bend. The courtyard below looked hollow, a square of broken concrete ringed by rust-streaked balconies and dark entryways. Eric Shaw knelt 3 paces behind her, breathing shallow and too fast. His spotting scope shifted as he adjusted it again. Then again. Claire didn't turn. She heard the rubber grip squeak faintly between his fingers. He cleared his throat, low, as if trying not to disturb anything. "This angle, are you sure we've got the alley?" he asked, voice tight. Claire answered without looking up from the scope. "We've got it. Keep scanning for movement west of the green dumpster. That's your zone." He shifted again. Something plastic clicked against metal. Claire resisted the impulse to speak. Let him learn. Let the silence settle over him until it became something solid. Outside, the sun burned low across the skyline, catching sharp on the edges of bent rebar and satellite dishes. It was late enough that shadow lines began crawling higher up the opposite tower. The light came in at an angle now, glancing off glass shards stuck in window frames. One strip of mirror across the street kept sending a dull reflection, her way never quite enough to give her away, but enough to watch. The radio gave a brief crackle, half a call sign. Then silence. Claire reached forward and tapped the gain down, filtering out the worst of the interference. She didn't ask for an update. If the extraction team was late, she'd know by what moved down below. If they were early, she'd know by the rhythm of the boots. She let out a quiet breath and focused again. The scope's crosshairs hovered steady above the southern alley mouth. Dust drifted sideways through it, catching gold in the fading light. Nothing moved yet. She waited. Let the tower breathe around her. Let Eric fidget and the city forget she was there. She would know when it was time. The alley shifted under the light again, heat rolling in soft ripples off the fractured pavement. Claire kept her cheek steady against the comb of the rifle stock, letting the scope adjust her eye more than the other way around. Her field of view was a mess, scattered dumpsters, collapsed scaffolding, a black sedan crushed flat into the east wall. Shadows carved the courtyard into sharp sections. Every corner looked like something could move inside it. Eric let out a breath beside her, audible. She didn't react, just made a mental note of his rhythm. "I've got movement," he whispered suddenly. "West side, near the red tarp." Claire didn't look away from her quadrant. "Describe it." He clicked his scope slightly. Civilian shirt, but he's crouched low, holding something. Claire shifted her left hand without lifting her face, slowly reaching back and pressing one gloved finger against Eric's forearm. His hand stilled. The radio clicked faintly, but no call came through. "Don't call it," she said softly. "He's unarmed. Watch the elbows." There was a long pause behind her. She heard him adjust his breathing. She waited until the figure passed behind the dumpster, lifted a crate, and began pulling something fabric, maybe onto a rack leaning in the shadows. Civilian. Probably gathering material. Just unlucky enough to be doing it in a war zone. Eric finally exhaled, audible again. "I thought—" "Don't think out loud," Claire said. Her tone didn't sharpen. It didn't need to. The figure vanished behind the rusted frame of a fire escape, and Claire returned to her scan of the central alley. The light had shifted again, longer shadows now, sharper definition. That helped, until it didn't. The earpiece clicked twice, then dropped into static. Claire toggled the gain, got a fragment something about reroute, then nothing but hiss. She tapped the push to talk. Overwatch Alpha, grid stable, request status on HVA position. No response. She let the silence stretch for 5 seconds, then rolled the radio switch off to save noise. Just under the scope's reticle, near the southeast drain path, a new figure emerged. Not part of the plan. Not from the right approach. The HVA, he wasn't supposed to be here yet, and he sure as hell wasn't supposed to be alone. Claire tracked him across the open stretch of the alley. His jacket was civilian cut but armored, his face half shadowed by a dusty cap. He glanced over his shoulder once, then jogged into the corridor between 2 broken balconies, an unscouted alley. No coverage, no clearance. No one had swept it. Claire's eyes flicked back to the upper balconies. She scanned the top windows, glass broken, dust moving. Then she saw them. 2 shapes. One prone behind a chunk of fallen wall, the other crouched beside what looked like a water tank with a makeshift spotting mirror. Militia, positioned deliberately, overlooking the alley the HVA just entered. She didn't hesitate. Her breath slowed. She locked the stock deeper against her shoulder and rolled the reticle to the prone shape. Wind still held steady from the left. No time to double-check. The suppressor hissed. No echo. Just a twitch. A red cloud bloomed fast, then sank. The second figure froze. Claire adjusted by 0.5 mil and waited. He didn't move again. He was trying to work out where the shot had come from. Eric's voice came out quiet. Did you just... Yes. She didn't lift her eye from the scope. The second figure ducked, crawling out of view. She let him go. No reason to chase shadows yet. She recentered the scope on the alley mouth. The HVA hadn't even looked up. Still jogging, hunched, toward whatever corner he thought would keep him alive. Claire's finger eased off the trigger. Her breathing never changed. Eric shifted behind her, hands still tight on the scope housing. Claire never moved her head. You watching the red tarp? He stammered slightly, then answered, Yes. Then keep watching. The tower pressed in again, full of glass dust, sun slices, and silence. Claire kept her cheek to the stock, her world locked in the crosshairs. Claire adjusted the elevation dial by instinct, but her eye wasn't locked to the alley anymore. Something in her peripheral caught just a flicker, like sun caught on something too clean. She didn't shift immediately, just held still, counted 5 breaths. Let the window frame shadows stretch across the floor in long broken bars of light. She brought her scope just slightly left, not far, no more than the breadth of 2 fingers. There it was again. Not light exactly, not movement. A distortion, a sliver of brightness where the opposite building should have shown only dust and rusted rails. The glint wasn't sharp like glass, it was angled, controlled, high up, 17th or 18th floor, across the open alley system, and at least 1 city block east. 1 window half covered by an iron screen, another by plastic wrap hanging in tatters. But between them, a gap-cracked concrete ledge, shallow shadow, and a hollow, patient gleam. She lowered her cheek from the rifle and blinked once. The glass in her own window trembled slightly from heat. No breeze moved the paper she'd taped earlier. Not yet. The shimmer came from something else. Eric, she said, without turning. Yeah. Do you see anything across the eastern quadrant? Top floors? 2:30 position? He swung the spotting scope over, sweeping too fast, then circling back. Looks. No movement. Some broken beams. Sheet plastic flapping. Maybe a busted HVAC cage. Claire didn't answer. She adjusted the angle just slightly again, this time letting the edge of the rifle's lens rest against the corner brick. She wasn't looking for a person. She was watching for the absence of randomness. Nothing moved, but the light didn't settle right. Her throat stayed dry. This wasn't militia. She breathed slowly, recalling the rooftop outside Kandahar. That one had waited 4 hours before firing hidden behind an old satellite dish. He'd taken Staff Sergeant Hall through the neck, and by the time she spotted the reflection, he was already repositioned. She hadn't won that duel. The extraction team had called her off before she had the second angle. This wasn't a militia ambush. This was someone trained to wait. Claire slid her boots slightly back along the vinyl floor, pressing deeper into the mat. Her elbows reset, her weight distributed again. And then the shot came. It didn't whistle. It cracked. Concrete beside her erupted into dust and grit. The top corner of the frame burst outward, splintering sharp across her view. The window glass sang for half a second, then gave out entirely with a brittle gasp. She reached back and yanked Eric down by the collar. He yelped, barely muffling it in time. "What?" "Don't move." She shifted her own rifle off axis and back, curling lower, adjusting her eye to the left flank of the broken aperture. No follow-up shot, no second flash, just the lingering sharp taste of fractured concrete dust in the air. Eric had frozen behind her, still breathing too fast. His hand rested on his headset cable, fingers twitching near the mic switch. She waited 10 full seconds before moving again. Her voice dropped. "You would have been dead." Eric didn't reply, just nodded into the floor. Claire scanned again, slow, deliberate, low angle. Nothing. Whoever had fired was already repositioned. She read it in the timing. It wasn't a panic shot. It was a probe, a reminder. This wasn't someone aiming to miss. This was someone who wanted her to know they were there. She crawled back 2 feet, using elbows and knees only. Her suppressed rifle bumped once against a piece of cracked tile. She held her breath, waiting for another shot. Nothing came. The glint was gone, but the imprint of its presence stayed. Eric finally spoke, voice low and dry. That wasn't one of theirs. "No, sniper." She paused, then answered, "Yes." He shifted toward the wall, trying to make himself smaller. His hands trembled now lightly, but enough to make the scope shake in its cradle. Claire retrieved her backup monocular from her pack and peered again through the opening. She traced the path, not the origin. The origin had moved, but the dust pattern on the opposite wall showed where the shot had crossed. Clean line, full velocity, high caliber suppression. No militia carried that kind of patience, or skill, or glass. "He's hunting us," she said quietly. Eric swallowed. "Us." "No," she corrected. "Me." She pulled the edge of the broken frame lower, dragging a splintered curtain of fiberboard down to block the center window. The sniper knew the level now, maybe even the angle, but not the exact pain. Not yet. Claire exhaled through her nose and lowered back to her rifle, repositioning half a meter west to a darker slice of shadow. The city outside remained quiet. No gunfire, no movement, but the air felt tighter, like someone had shut a door she hadn't known was open. She didn't speak again. She didn't blink toward Eric. She stayed behind the scope and watched, because now, someone else was watching her back. Claire crouched low, pressing one knee into the tile until the bone beneath it stopped protesting. She studied the fractured wall segment to her right, an old cubicle divider half torn from the floor and warped at the center. Behind it, a load-bearing column with just enough depth to hide her silhouette. She drew her multi-tool and slowly pried off the drywall panel that faced the far alley. It came loose with a dry crackle, dust spiraling outward in tiny arcs. No shot followed. Not yet. Behind her, Eric whispered something to himself. She didn't catch the words. His scope clinked faintly as he adjusted it again, probably for the 10th time in 5 minutes. She reached into her kit pouch and removed a small rectangular mirror shattered diagonally, salvaged from a compact she'd confiscated off a cartel gunrunner back in Juarez. She tilted the glass just enough to catch the angle of the sun behind her, bouncing a glint onto the far edge of the open window, the one she knew the rival sniper had marked during his last shot. "Eric," she said quietly, not turning around. "Keep your eye on the southeast gate. Watch for anyone circling wide." His reply was shaky. I'm trying. The light's shifting, and they're not clearing the open. It's all too. You're here to see, not to speak. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The quiet did the rest. He steadied his hands. Or tried to. She could hear the effort in the silence that followed. With the decoy mirror propped against a fractured piece of plasterboard, Claire backed away, low to the floor, staying within the shadow line. She pushed a long abandoned filing cabinet 3 inches with her shoulder, slow enough that its legs didn't squeal. Beyond it, a darker alcove opened a forgotten maintenance nook with a broken vent, and just enough angle to cover the east tower's exposed window row. She slid into position, elbow down first, rifle cradled across both arms. The concrete beneath her was cold and slightly damp. She ignored it. Through her scope, she watched the mirrored glint on the old window flash once, then twice. She didn't blink. The sniper took the bait. The shot came clean. No sound but the muted thump of impact on the wall where the reflection had been. She saw plaster bloom outward, a perfect shot, right through the center of where her head would have been. Her finger hovered over the trigger, but no silhouette followed, no muzzle flash, no thermal shimmer. He was already gone. Claire breathed in once, slow, no celebration, only understanding. He had waited, watched the angle, timed her reappearance. She had disappeared too soon to catch his firing point, a draw, tactical respect, exchanged in silence. The radio crackled again, harder this time, screaming in the background, short bursts of panicked words layered over static. She twisted the dial. "This is Overwatch Alpha," she said, clipped and calm. "Confirm status, call sign." No reply, but the sound told her what had happened. Someone down, friendly, close enough that the signal came clean. Eric's voice broke again. "They're taking fire. I can't, someone's dragging." She didn't answer. She adjusted her scope back toward the alley mouth, checked wind with the small paper strip taped to the far wall, and waited. The sniper might still be watching, might be repositioned, might be sighting her now, but the team below didn't know that. They were bleeding into the street, visible, moving fast and without cover. Claire tightened her grip on the rifle. No time for second shots, no time for perfect angles. She had to act, and do it without being seen. Claire settled into the position like she was laying down the final brushstroke of a painting. Her body was still, her arms locked in a position she could hold for hours if she had to. The crosshair floated over a dark window frame across the alley system. One broken corner of a concrete tower with just enough exposed edge to frame the faint outline of a shoulder, a jawline, the rounded rise of a scope housing. She had him. He wasn't moving. Neither was she. Her breath came in slow rhythm, one inhale every 4 seconds. She counted out the pattern unconsciously. In the back of her mind, her finger hovered against the trigger's edge, pad aligned perfectly, pressure beginning to build, not enough to break, just enough to feel the tension form beneath the metal. Her world narrowed to the reticle and the pulse in her left wrist. One click forward, and she'd end it. Then, movement. Not in the window. In her periphery, a soft blur to the bottom right of her scope. She didn't lift her head, didn't shift, just let her eye drag downward by degrees, trailing the motion as it crept across the edge of her view. A figure was stepping into the alley from the north corridor. Light civilian jacket, hunched posture, familiar gait. The HVA. He was off track, wrong alley, wrong time, alone. Claire's heart didn't jump. It slowed. Everything telescoped inward. Her mind walked the equation without panic. If she took the shot, she would reveal her position to a rival who was either waiting or already gone. The sniper might fire in reply. Or worse, hold fire. Trace her origin. Wait for the next angle. That meant the HVA, now directly in view of that upper tower, would be marked. Claire could kill her target and still lose the asset. She adjusted the reticle a breath to the left. A half-mil offset. Not enough to be noticed by anyone untrained. Just enough to whisper past. Her finger tightened. She exhaled. The shot cracked like cloth being torn at a distance. Suppressed, but clean. On the opposite side, a figure militia, poorly hidden, jerked backward and scrambled behind a truck frame. He wasn't hit, just startled. The HVA froze for a half second, then bolted toward a side wall and dropped flat, out of sight. No scream, no return fire. The rival sniper didn't reply. Maybe he'd seen it all. Maybe he was gone. Claire watched through the scope another full 10 seconds, then pulled her cheek from the stock. Behind her, Eric spoke without breath. "You had him." She didn't move. "He had me." The weight of the rifle remained across her arms. The chamber hissed faintly as it cooled. No one cheered. No one called in the save. The HVA would live. The sniper would wait. Claire stayed exactly where she was, silent, still, knowing it would not be the last time she let a shot go. Claire folded the broken laptop shell open with care, wiping its dust-coated screen with a dry corner of gauze. The casing barely held together. Hinge bent. Plastic cracked in 3 places. She didn't need it to work. She just needed it to gleam. It was old enough to still carry a faint sheen when angled just right. Enough of a reflection to mimic glass. She tilted it against the broken sill of the window they'd abandoned minutes ago, the one the rival sniper had already marked. It sat now in shadow, barely lit except for the bounce light from a metal HVAC vent 3 floors down. The reflection was faint, wobbled by heat, shimmer, but it would do. From a long enough distance, through the right lens, it might look like the edge of a scope glinting, just enough to tempt a second strike. She crawled back low, dragging her body across the tile inch by inch. Her elbows and hips moved with practiced pressure, never lifting more than necessary. Dust clung to her uniform, and the grit scraped faintly beneath her knees. She didn't care. Every surface had already been memorized. She reached Eric's position and tapped his shoulder. His face had gone pale again, eyes wide and a little too shiny. "If I go quiet," she said, "you finish the call." He swallowed, nodded, no more words. Claire shifted left, moving behind a half-fallen pillar. The concrete there was cracked in a spiderweb pattern, but still solid. From that angle, she could cut a line straight through the east quadrant. It wasn't a sniper's perch, it was too tight. Too dark, but it gave her what she needed. A one-shot angle. She slid into position and steadied her rifle. Breathing slowed. The familiar narrowing of her awareness returned. She counted the rhythm between her own pulse and the faraway bird call that drifted in from somewhere beyond the skyline. The rival sniper fired. The laptop screen shattered instantly. A clean, precise impact center mass. The casing split with a pop, and the sound of plastic skittered across the tile. Claire never flinched. She rotated 1 degree and fired back. The shot rang soft through her suppressor, but her timing was late. She knew it the second it left the barrel. The figure in the opposite window had already moved. She'd fired at the ghost of his position, not the shape itself. A mistake of milliseconds. She didn't curse. She didn't react. Just lowered the rifle a fraction and went still. A full minute passed. No return fire, no movement. The city had gone quiet again. Claire stayed prone, breathing through her nose, scanning inch by inch, not for a head, not for a rifle barrel, for anything wrong, anything out of place. She pulled a small pencil stub from her sleeve pocket and flicked open the laminated range card tucked into her vest. She marked a new estimated angle in the margin, updated wind drift, calculated the bullet's deviation by 5 centimeters, then folded the sheet back without looking. The sun caught a shard of glass on a rooftop duct system 3 buildings east. The air over it trembled. That's where he moved. She remembered Fallujah. Rooftop duels at dawn. A sniper who never showed more than his shadow, one she never managed to beat. She hadn't seen him. She had only learned to see where he didn't want to be seen. That had saved her life then. it might do so again. She watched the concrete lip of the building where the rival had repositioned. A light haze of red dust shifted there, subtle, wind-dragged, but unnaturally brief. Not drift, not fallout. Breath. She adjusted. No sudden movement. No exhale. Just a smooth pivot of the stock against her shoulder and a micro-adjustment on the rear sight. She took in a full breath, let it out halfway, and held. Then she fired. The recoil settled softly into her collarbone. The report barely registered in the echo of her mind. Through the scope, she saw nothing. No flinch, no collapse, no silhouette vanishing from frame. But he didn't fire back. Claire stayed prone. 5 seconds. 10. Silence. Somewhere below, the sound of boots echoed faintly off concrete, her team moving again. She kept her eye behind the glass. The shot had landed. She didn't need to see the body. The duel had ended. She just didn't know which of them still had breath in their lungs. Claire didn't move. Her cheek stayed against the stock, her left eye fixed behind the scope. She waited for the return fire that didn't come, for the flash of movement where there was none. Across the distance, the rooftop remained still. No blood, no collapse, no visible proof. Just silence where there should have been retaliation. She knew what that meant. The sniper wasn't repositioning. He wasn't watching anymore. He wasn't anything now. She didn't speak, didn't blink. Only her fingers shifted, drawing the bolt back with one quiet pull. The casing popped out and clinked once against the floor tile. She let it lie there, warm and faintly smoking. Below, the courtyard began to move again. Figures darted between cover, smaller shapes this time. The extraction team. One of them crouched low and motioned toward the alley where the HVA had gone to ground. A second joined, then a third. They regrouped in tight formation, weapons high, sweeping wide. Radio static cracked, then surged into clarity. Echo 2, visual on package. Say again, visual on package. Moving to exfil. Eric shifted behind her. His voice came low. Unsure. Was that him? The shot. Claire didn't answer. She reached for her small green notebook, flipped to the next blank page, and pulled her pencil stub from the edge binding. She wrote one line, Tower Essie, 18th floor. Distance confirmed. Wind left to right. Impact presumed. No reaction observed. She didn't sign it, didn't initial, just closed the book and set it aside. The radio continued. More noise now, call signs. Coded routes. Someone calling out coordinates for rooftop watch. Claire listened without reacting. She kept her scope trained on the southeast quadrant, watching the shadows lengthen and break apart as the sun dropped further across the skyline. The air had changed, not calmer, just empty. The threat was gone, but the instinct to hold steady remained. Finally, the confirmation came. It didn't sound like a victory. It sounded like someone reading from a checklist. Extraction complete, package secure, no friendly losses confirmed on site. Claire exhaled once. She tapped her mic switch. Copy. Overwatch stable. Nothing else. Eric leaned forward again. Should we move? Claire adjusted the scope half a notch, settling it back over the alley mouth. Hold. Sweep isn't done. He didn't question it. Not this time. The chamber of her rifle still radiated a faint heat. The smell of cordite lingered in the dry air. She didn't clean it yet. Didn't pack. Her finger stayed clear of the trigger. Her breath even. There was nothing left to shoot. She still watched. Because the job wasn't done when the shot landed. It was done when everyone else had walked away alive and no one remembered she was there. She blinked once, reset her focus, and kept scanning. The forward staging lot buzzed with movement. Diesel engines idled near pallets of ammunition, somewhere behind the tents. Someone laughed too loud, too relieved. A group of Navy corpsmen hauled a stretcher out of a Blackhawk, their boots kicking up spirals of grit in the low evening light. No one looked toward the corner of the tarmac where Claire Merrick sat. She was still in full gear. Dust clung to her sleeves and boots, and a smear of carbon streaked across the side of her suppressor. She hadn't bothered to wipe it off. She sat on the edge of a concrete loading dock beside a stack of disused crates, unwrapping a protein bar slowly, methodically, as if she were still mid-operation. Across the lot, Eric stood among a small knot of personnel operators, maybe 2 of the recon officers, 1 clipboard-vested logistics tech. They were nodding, shaking his hand. Someone clapped his shoulder. He didn't protest, didn't look toward Claire. She didn't mind. That wasn't the point. She chewed once, then set the rest of the bar on her knee and opened her notebook. The same green field journal, same pencil. She turned to a clean page and sketched the southeast tower from memory 15 lines, 2 window clusters, and the visible collapse along the left-facing edge. No details, just structure. She labeled it in small, square, lettering ghost. No date, no name. That, too, wasn't the point. The encrypted device buzzed once in her pocket. She didn't rush to check it. She finished the sketch, let the pencil rest in the spine fold, and only then pulled the phone into her hand. The message on screen was brief. 1 saw first, 1 fired last. There was no sender name, no tag, just the quiet echo of a language only a few people ever learned to speak. She didn't smile, but her breath slowed. A trace of something not satisfaction, not relief moved across her face. Recognition. Maybe. Nothing more. She powered off the device, slipped it back into her thigh pocket, and closed the notebook. No dramatics, no dramatic glance over her shoulder. She just stood, tucking the half-eaten bar into its wrapper, sliding it into her gear pouch. The base continued on without noticing. Trucks shifted into gear. Radios crackled. Briefings began behind canvas flaps. Names were recorded. After-action reports drafted. Chains of command restored to their rightful order. Claire walked past it all without slowing. She crossed the edge of the tarmac alone. No one called her name. No one flagged her down. Her boots left a thin trail through the dust curling off the asphalt. It was late now, shadows long, light cooling. She moved toward the shadow of the hangar, not to rest, not to be seen, just to reset. She would be ready when the next call came. Until then, she would remain exactly as she was meant to be, unmarked, unremembered, and watching.